All right, welcome to this week's episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. Today, I have a comic who I've liked for a long time. We haven't crossed paths too often, but I've always been a fan. Today, I have Amy Miller. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing it.
Of course. I think we don't cross paths often, but when we do, it's very nice.
Yes. So I typically start off every podcast with a story of like when I met my guest. And I don't remember the first time we met because I'd been to Portland a few times to feature at Helium. But I do know the first time we worked together because that week was unforgettable. I remember everything about that week because it was insane to me. You and I were opening for Tom Segura at the Portland Helium, and it snowed 2 inches, and the whole fucking city shut down for the weekend.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, just for context, we should tell people it was long enough ago that even without the snow, Tom was selling like maybe half of the room. Like He was not like a sellout act, even though. No,
that's what was cool because his first special was completely normal. And he actually had his laptop with him that weekend editing it. Like that's how new it was. His first special wasn't even out yet.
Yeah. I mean, I already thought he was one of the funniest people I'd ever seen. But Portland is not equipped for snow, and for a couple of reasons. They will not salt the roads or anything because they don't want it going into the drainage system and hurting the fish.
Animals, yes.
Which makes sense, but also, I don't know. You got a city to run too. They basically just say, stay home. Like if it snows, they're like, yeah, just don't go anywhere. And people are like, I have to work.
I know that was truly mind blowing to me because I'm outside Philadelphia. I've grown up with snow almost every winter. And like that wouldn't have been like a 2-hour school delay here, but the city like shut down for the weekend. And,
I know.
And I loved it. It was only legitimately just like 2 inches. And I just remember I was walking down the street and there were 3 lanes of the road and the snow plow was going down the middle lane, pushing more snow into the left and right lane. And I was like, this city has no idea what they're doing.
No, and they have like maybe 2 plows total. And then if it's a really bad snow, they have to call in extra plows from the neighboring towns. But like, it's people are calling the club saying like, I can't get there. And they're not wrong. Even friends who like move there from the Midwest or the East Coast are like, yeah, but you still can't just drive through the snow without chains if the roads aren't salted or plowed or anything. It's very dangerous. So you don't want to tell people like, yeah, just come to the show anyway. It's like, no, you could die.
Yeah, I get it. And I remember like Shayna was just on the phone left and right. I mean, it was like all hands on deck in the box office that weekend, fielding all these phone calls. And then I remember doing jokes about it because it was so funny to me. I made fun of them for not knowing how to deal with it. And I still do those jokes when I go to Portland. I was like, I was here once when it snowed years ago, and the jokes still hold up. The funniest thing to me, I remember seeing a woman driving her car covered in snow, but she didn't even wipe off her whole windshield. She just wiped the snow off of like where her eyes could see out of.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Wait, but do you remember, you're saying all hands on deck, but do you remember that Tom also started calling people?
Tom
and it was fucking hilarious.
Yep. Tom was answering phone calls and calling people back. And yeah, you're right. Like he's obviously, we'll get to him more later because I know you and I both opened for him on his bigger gigs. But I mean, we did 3 shows out of 6, and I don't think there was 50 people at the biggest show.
I know, it's crazy. And our friend at the time, now my boyfriend who used to manage the club with Shayna, also pointed out to Tom on the list of ticket buyers, a very new comedian. So I'll never forget that he called and pretended to be like, hey, this is, Tom from the club, or he made up a name. And he was like, yeah, we're thinking about offering some improv classes, and we just want to know if we can get your commitment to sign up. And it's like, it's like the A club in town and he wants to work there and, be included. So he's like, yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty good. I'll be down there in a couple hours. And like, this went on for so long until Tom was like, hey, it's Tom Segura. The show's canceled. So funny.
I want to come back to this in 1 second, but okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're bad luck at helium. Didn't you come to Philly and they didn't have like electricity one time?
Yes, exactly.
Then it's you.
Well, it's really funny too, because for so long, you guys would come out and play Portland and people from Cap City would come play Portland. And there was like all this reciprocity between like Mark Grossman's clubs, except for us. Like we couldn't get feature time at any of the other heliums and never understood why.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I wonder why that was.
And you're talking about a roster for a lot of that time of like Ron Funches, Ian Carmel, Shane Torres, me, Sean Jordan. It's like, come on, man. I don't know. I mean, whatever. I love working comedy clubs. So I think that Mark Grossman is perfect. Please give me your money. I don't know what it was, but it was fun because you guys would like come pretty often and we would like, get to know each other a little bit. And that was always really cool. But then finally I was able to work Philly, I think maybe because the headliner brought me whoever it was. Was it Judah? Was that the weekend?
You know what? I think it was, and I have that written here on my notes. I'm almost certain it was.
I think it was Judah because that's the perfect comic for that to happen to. Because he's so fucking weird and he loves to do crowd work that to be like, oh, we have no lights or sound. Like, do you He loved it.
He probably made a joke about it, how he like ate or punched the generator of, like he probably had something already ready to go.
Yeah, and I think the shows went fine for having like no lighting or anything.
Yeah, I know. Weren't you guys like doing sound through like a guitar amp that was on the stool?
Yes, and then they rigged up, I think, this little like shop light basically to be our spotlight, and it was very weird but very fun weekend. I always have a good time going to Philly. I really miss it.
Very cool, dude. It's a good city for comedy, and that's what I love. Like bouncing around the heliums and stuff. Like I love when you meet new comics that are running in the same circles and you get to hang out. You don't cross paths often, but when you do, it's awesome. Because have you ever been to a club where like the local comics don't hang, and it's weird?
Yes, well, because they're bad clubs and the management has like made it an unwelcoming place to come hang out. And that always sucks. Like that's always a marker of a bad club. I'm like, oh, there's no comics here. And, it's not like I'm a sellout act. Like, there's room for sure. I always think if you own a club and you want to foster the local scene, anytime you have room in the showroom, you should let comics come for like the drink minimum or whatever. And people that don't do that are just fucking those are the clubs that I'm like, if you don't make it through the pandemic, it's fine.
Yeah, no, when you're beginning, and I shouldn't even say beginning. Well, yeah, it's important in the early days, but hanging in the back is half the fun because you're new and you learn and you're seeing all these different headliners every week and seeing how they do it. Like sitting in the back is like one of the best teachers there is when you're just starting out.
Oh, I loved it. And the Punchline in San Francisco is like my home club, but Helium is of course a close second. And I mean, I ended up moving in with the manager and making him move to LA. Well, I didn't make him. Okay. He came of his own volition, but I mean, we always hung out there at the bar, and just the acts that, Grossman was getting, it was like, this is so fucking rad to be like 3 years into comedy and be able to see Sinbad, with my friends and like it was so fun. I miss that so much. But yeah, when that doesn't happen, I really don't even understand like what the owner is thinking. You know what I mean? Like there's like Laughs in Tucson is like that. I mean, that guy's kind of a dick too, where he's just like, he has no interest in fostering the local scene. And so a lot of the openers are really bad because he doesn't say like, hey, come hang out.
I never did that room. Which Laughs in Tucson?
Yeah, you're not really missing out on much.
Understandable. But I know what you mean, though, with that excitement, because I started doing stand-up about a year before Helium opened, and we had a club in town, but they weren't bringing in the best names, so we weren't getting names, right? So Helium opens, and then out of nowhere, we got Greg Giraldo, Maria Bamford, and I was like, holy shit, like it was like so eye-opening to finally see all these people come through, like John Doerr, Jim Gaffigan, Laurie Kilmartin, and I can name a million people that I loved and saw on television, and I would talk to some of these people, and they were like, yeah, we never even came to Philly before Helium opened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a real game changer, and that chain lives and dies by their staff. I mean, every Helium you go to, it's like, it's just so well done and like whatever about the owner.
Just do it
but
right.
yeah, they do it right and they make it fun. And like, yeah, those are some of my most special memories in Portland, is just like hanging out at the club.
That's seriously some of the best things about comedy. So you mentioned like the San Fran Punchline is your home. Is that where you did your very first set?
It's where I did my first club set. The first set and it was the first club to hire me for sure. And she really is, I won't say the booker's name. She's very shy, or she just doesn't like to be bothered, but
yes, it's true. But she is awesome. She's done a lot for me and she rules.
She's awesome. She's very hands-on when she supports you. And so she doesn't just like nurture and hire you. If you're from the Bay Area, she also like tells you the right way to work a club and the right way to get work and the right way to host, But anyway, my first comedy set was at the
let's do the very, very first set first. Well, even before that, let me take you one step back. And like, what was your interest in comedy before you got to that first set? Like, what comics did you like, or what got you to even want to try it?
So it's a little interesting. So I wasn't like, at the time I started, which is 2010, I was not like a comedy nerd. I mean, most of my stand-up exposure had been more as a kid, I think. Occasionally, I think like, in my early 20s, I had seen a couple shows at the Punchline, like the Comedians of Comedy. And I remember going to like David Cross with my brother. But it definitely wasn't a massive part of my life. Although I had this foundation of like my dad watched a lot of comedy, and also as kids, we had no like bedtime or supervision. So I would just like stay up late watching like Premium Blend and anything on HBO and, a lot of Eddie Murphy Raw, which we should not have been watching as small children.
Yeah, no bedtime and watching Raw. That's a lawless land over there.
I know, it was absolutely bonkers. But when I went into it, it was really, I was kind of peer pressured by my friend Becky Wolf, who was like, she's just a free spirit and she just is fearless. And she was like, I want to try stand up. Let's do an open mic. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I like, it appeals to me to do it a couple times because it just sounds so scary and crazy. And I really was working to get over my stage fright. Like that was like, I had just turned 30 and I was in this place where I'm like, I have a lot of social anxiety. I have a lot of stage fright. I don't like speaking in front of people, even at work. And it's always been a part of my life. So I really want to find a way to overcome it. So maybe just diving into like the scariest thing possible will help. So that was a big part of it. And then Becky didn't end up, like, she did comedy only for maybe a year. And then I didn't know I was going to keep doing it. I mean, I didn't even know I was necessarily going to come back a second time. But the class of people in the Bay Area of comics at that time were so incredible. And I love the people I started with. And I was like, certainly looking for community, probably without being able to pinpoint that at the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I was looking for a crew to hang out with and didn't know what it was or what I was looking for.
Yeah, totally. And at that time, it's like a deep recession. The Bay Area at that time was really like at pandemic levels of unemployment and people and businesses closing. even as tech continued to take off, I mean, those things worked hand in hand, like gentrification happening. And there was just so much struggle going on. And I was really struggling. I was having the worst year of my life. And it was just so nice to like have this outlet and also meet all these rad people and like have frankly, a place to go every night and something I was working towards. So I never expected to go back a second time, but I got some laughs the first time and people introduced themselves to me. And, you know, the host of that laundromat open mic, Tony Sparks, who hosted it for like 15 years, an open mic.
Like weekly. An actual laundromat, or was that just like some like cool name for the...
No, it's an actual laundromat, and many people would come and do their laundry and put headphones in so they didn't have to hear the open mic.
That's awesome. So you're saying your first set was in a laundromat?
Yeah, the Brainwash. I mean, it's where a lot of people in the Bay Area started. And in fact, like it's one of those open mics where when people made it bigger and had moved to LA, when they came back to visit, they would drop in and do a set at the Brainwash.
Oh, that stuff is so awesome.
Yeah, it was so, because they are like a lot of people point to it as how and why they started. And I don't think I would have continued without that specific open mic, because Tony Sparks always let women sign up first. So if you want to get in, get out, you know, or if you want to be like 15th, so you can calm your nerves a little bit, you know, have a beer, whatever. And that was huge for me, because he just knew like, 60 people are going to sign up for this fucking mic. There's going to be 4 women. You know what I mean? So like, I'm going to let them sign up first so they'll come back. And it's a really, really helpful system, because I wouldn't have been back without it.
That's awesome. So you said your first set went well though. That very first time you got some laughs.
Yeah. I mean, I was fully blacked out, not from alcohol, just, you know, how you just like have to leave your body when you're that nervous.
Yeah.
But I remember getting laughs, and specifically from my friend now, OJ Patterson, who has always been so supportive. But like, I remember him being in the front and laughing, because there were people also that were so supportive. They would like, you know, move up front if there was a new person, and especially if there was a new woman, because they're like, well, we want you to come back, you know? And yeah, it was just the perfect kind of like the chemistry of that place, and the people that I met was the right circumstances for me to do it again and again and again. And then now we're 10 years in. Yeah,
well, I'm a little bit more than that, but you know, we're all just trudging along.
This year doesn't count.
Yeah, seriously. You came into a welcoming atmosphere, which is awesome. I mean, so many people had their first set at a shitty bar gig and had to fight with TVs and, you know, people playing pool and, you know, all sorts of shit like that. So you came into a really welcoming spot.
I think I focus more on the positive of it now, but I don't. Oh, sorry. Can you hear that noise outside? Is that annoying?
No, I don't hear anything.
Okay. I know that in retrospect at the time, there were also many negative aspects that, you know, at this point don't matter. But at the time, you know, yes, there were the creeps who made it quote unquote welcoming for new women because they wanted to have sex with us. And yes, there were mean girls, so mean, but maybe one of them is still a comedian, you know what I mean? And she's great and we're friends now. And fully, she has like since apologized. I won't say who it was, but you know, she was just kind of a bully. And there was like a group of shitty women that I was like, why are you of all people making it, you know, uncomfortable for me to be here? Shouldn't you be stoked that there's like a new woman? So there were those aspects for sure. And like a lot of gossip, and there's a lot of the reasons why I moved up to Portland to kind of change my comedy scene is that I was like doing well in the Bay Area and I was getting a lot of gigs. And yeah, there's always a contingency of people that are shitty about it when especially a new woman is like getting funny and trying to run some shit, you know, like there's a lot of how dare she people, but they never stick with comedy. So whenever like young women are like, do you have any advice for my first couple years? I'm like, I swear to you, the people that are the worst mean the least. They will not stick with this. You won't remember them later. You know, they're going to go back to their shitty jobs and their shitty lives, and you'll be fine. But at the time, it feels, it's like high school. It feels very personal and it feels very sad. But yeah, I have a rosier outlook on it now, I think, because I'm just removed from it. But I know at the time there were definitely negatives and positives.
That makes sense. The first person who was ever mean to me in comedy was a woman. And the club manager actually said something to her, and she never fucking came back. So
good.
Yeah,
I was so lucky. Go ahead.
It's such a quick story. I was, a couple months in, and I'm doing the same jokes over and over again because I'm working on something. I'm working on, like, legitimately my first 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm working on. My only goal is to get a good 10 or 15 right now, right? I'm not even looking to, like, host at the club. I just want to get a first 10 that I like. And this woman went on after me. Her stage name was Peaches. And she just made fun of me for doing the same jokes every single week. And the club manager pulled her aside and said, these people, if you're a comic, you want to work on an act, you want to build something. And then I never saw her again.
That's so funny. Yeah, I got very lucky with my home clubs because, like, at the Punchline, to begin with, like, you cannot get through there if you're a shitty or rude person. Like, you won't get work. I mean, they even, if the bartenders tell Molly, like, hey, this dude never tips when he buys drinks at the open mic, like, you're not going to get work there. And it was the same having, the team of Adam and Shayna at Helium. Like, I'm so grateful for that. It was like, yeah, if you're a dickhead, you're not going to get on the mic. Like, we're not going to hire you. You have to be professional and nice and good to the staff. And, like, those are the best clubs. Like, if you want a good club, you have to run it that way. So I love that they were just like, you're mean to Pat, don't come back here.
Well, he just reprimanded her. It wasn't so much being mean to me. She didn't understand how comedy worked. Like, right. Of course I'm doing the same act. We're trying to build something. But I don't know how people don't realize that everybody's in cahoots. If you're a dick to the bartender or the server, they're going to let the manager know, and you're not coming back. Like, how do you not? I don't know how. Like, over the years, we both have heard horror stories of comics that don't come back or whatever. Even famous headliners are dicks to the waitstaff. I don't understand. I can't even fathom how that's in somebody's mentality to walk into a comedy club and fucking act that way.
Oh, I know. And it's so funny because Adam worked there for so long that once we got to LA, like, I kind of already knew all the headliners to avoid. And a lot of them aren't even like sex creeps or anything. I'm just like, you're a dick to the staff, and I know that. And because Adam is so sweet, I don't know why this is all about Adam, Pat, but
well, tell him I said hello. It's been forever. I loved hanging out with him when I was in Portland. When you said your boyfriend didn't say his name the first two times, I'm like, am I not mentioning this at all? Or
no, I definitely will tell him you said hi. But so him. So, like, people are nice to him because he's nothing but sweet and accommodating, and he wants everyone to be comfortable and have a good time. So if you roll in there and you're a dick to him, like, there's something fundamentally wrong with you as a person. I still feel this way. Like, we live in a 6-unit building, and one of our neighbors is just rude to Adam. So she's like fucking dead to me because I don't even know why you would do that. Like,
I don't get it. I mean, even if there's people you like genuinely don't like or agree with, you don't have to socialize. You can be cordial and not say much, but you don't have to fucking be a dick. Like,
I know. So there's, people like, when we still had comedy, like, if I see them at the store and they see my set or whatever, and they're like, hey, good set. I'm like, you fucking yelled at this man in 2013 in Portland. Like, I don't say that obviously, but I'm like, don't fucking talk to me, you piece of shit. It's good to know going in all the bad ones.
Yeah, seriously. So the San Fran Punchline might be like, I mean, I'm partial to Philly Helium because that's my home club, but dude, San Fran Punchline might be a immediate number 2. That is heaven.
It's incredible. And the shape, the size of the room, just normally, like, having a bar in the back of the room fucking never works. but for some
We're
reason
the only club that
it
ever
works
does it
there.
right.
Yeah, and the bartenders are the best, and just the sound and the light, and like it's a magical room, so much that so that when Google bought the fucking building and it was going to close, and to be honest, I think Molly and other people were kind of like, oh, let's look at this as a positive. Like we could have a green room with a bathroom, and we can have like not be in this weird rooftop courtyard where the ivy is filled with mice, you know, like we can
did
have
not know about the mice part.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of mice, and I mean, I feel bad about saying this, but also this is just what happens. Like you'll see as soon as the showroom is empty, like a couple little critters like come out and get like crumbs, like not in the kitchen, in the showroom. They just come in from outside and they're like, okay, it's quiet. And I know people drop chips. So you just see like a couple tiny mice like running around the showroom. And I hope that doesn't turn people off of going there.
No, you said that in a way, the way you said that made it sound like almost adorable. Like there's a difference between like a rat infestation and then like cute mice popping in when the people leave. You phrased that. You worded that very well. Okay, good. Yes. And they are mice, not rats. And the kitchen is clean. It's just when you're surrounded by ivy, like that happens. So they were like, yeah, let's fucking get a new space. And then Chappelle and Kamau and all these people came together to save the Punchline, and it worked. And they got registered as a historical landmark, which in San Francisco, you can't be kicked out, you know, so like City Lights Books and all these like old restaurants in Little Italy, like can't be evicted because they're part of, you have to prove that your business is a part of the fabric of the city, right? So then it got saved and they're like, great, now we have to stay in this shitty building. But because it's so good for comedy, like we all have this emotional attachment to that room when it's like, you know, they're making everything in like one deep fryer, you know, it's tiny and every headliner has to go take a piss with all the fans. Like, Yep. And you know, if you're a comic on the show, you know, you hope you get the one bar stool in the corner so you can watch the show too, or Yep. That club it's like you said, the size, the layout, low ceilings, and it's the only club to ever make the bar in the back work. And just for the record, John Stout rules. I love that guy. Yeah, there's so many things. Like, I mean, that corner stool. Yeah, I miss it so much. The fucking SFPD guy who must be, if he hasn't retired in the pandemic, he must be close. You know, he's like in his 60s. He comes in between shows, has a cup of coffee. I'm not pro cop. He might be the only police officer besides Carl Winslow that I've ever liked. But, you know, he comes in between shows. He's been doing this for decades to make sure, you know, everybody gets out, nothing's unruly, but he really wants a free cup of coffee. You know what I mean? And he deserves it. You know what? I don't know his name, but I know his face. I've done that club a couple times, and I can see his face. And there's a cop who does the same thing at Hilarities in Cleveland, and it's been the same cop for the last decade I've been working that club. Totally. And I've sat back there on those corner stools, like, you know, Willie Brown will just stop by and be like, I just want to watch the show. I'm Willie Brown. And you're like, tight. Or if headliners are in town doing another show, like, you know, one of the last times I was there, Doug Benson dropped by to just see my set. And I'm like, God, you're such a good friend. Like, why would you want to watch comedy when you're in your off time, you know? And yeah, I love it. You're always in the server's way, no matter where you put your body in that club. Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple rooms like that where even if you're waiting to go on stage any second now, you're like 4 servers walk past, you're like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And they're not as upset about it as you are. No, you know? But we have to overanalyze everything. So we think the whole staff hates us, but this is the only spot we can physically stand because we're going on in 10 seconds. Yeah, and they're so used to it, but they also will remember, you know, those comics who don't say I'm sorry, and just like wantonly
flail their body around in these tight spaces. I mean, that's another reason at the Punchline you won't get work. If you're standing in the hallway too much, or you hang out in the green room when you're not on the show, and you don't tip, yeah, it's donezo for you.
Oh, now that you mentioned that, doesn't the is there a sign in the green room at the San Fran Punchline that says you can't hang in here if you're not on the show?
Yeah, they only added it a few years ago because it just got out of hand. There were just these local dudes that would sit in there, invite themselves in with a headliner they don't even know. And then somehow,
how do you do that?
I mean, the brazenness of some of these guys, and listen, am I generalizing? Yes. Is it guys 100% of the time? Yes. Which is another piece of the advice that I give, young women comics, if they ask, is don't be a dick, but you can ask for stuff, because these dudes are out here asking for stuff when they are not funny, not cool to hang out with, they would just walk in and introduce themselves to a headliner who is oh, okay, I guess at this club people can just come in the green room. They also don't want to make a fuss, especially if it's a new headliner. When it's your first time headlining a club and you're I don't want to make trouble. I want to be asked back.
Of course.
And so these guys will be even make up lies, and be oh, Molly said I could do a set. And then they're okay, I don't know you, but you walked in here confidently, I will never understand it.
I don't either. This falls under the same category of being a dick, because essentially, I would consider that trespassing. You're not supposed to be there.
Exactly.
I don't understand. There's if a headliner comes through town and you know them and you pop in the green room to say, hey, that's one thing. I've done that a million times when people would come to Helium year after year and we would, bullshit and say, hey. But if I didn't know the headliner, there is no fucking way I could open that green room door. There's just no way.
No, you have to be a sociopath. And it's always these guys who also don't realize that they're not good, and they have to manipulate people into getting sets because no one's offering, because they're not funny. You know what I mean?
Oh, but yeah, the whole things go hand in hand.
I mean, Pat, I can't tell you, for sure since March, during the pandemic, I've had, no joke, 4 or 5 men I don't really know reach out to me to ask for advice about either how to get into comedy, how to get booked. And I'm bitch, I'm not working right now. Nobody is. I mean, people are, but they shouldn't be.
I had 2 people back in springtime, let's say. I don't remember when, springtime, when the pandemic, the shutdowns were starting hard and things were really slowing down or shutting completely. I had 2 separate comics email me and ask how to start comedy. I'm well, first of all, don't start during a global pandemic.
Exactly.
And
there's Zoom open mics, but...
I know. And I even told him, and I kind of felt like a dick to the one guy. I wasn't being a dick. I just had no other way to explain it. I was and to be honest, when shit gets back to normal, the bottlenecking is going to be crazy. Every headliner is going to try to get back. Every feature is going to try to get back. Every host wants to come back. And I don't even know what the fuck that means for open mics. So I was sorry, dude, I really can't help you right now. If times were different, I could absolutely. But I feel at the moment, I really got nothing for you because I lost my entire calendar. So
yeah, exactly. And it is just, but you're also God, the balls on you to feel this is okay to ask right now is just that tells me alone that you might not make it, but the inverse of that is, when I have women approach me, there's so many apologies involved. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to bother you. And I will say also good men. And immediately I'm no, you're who I want to ask for help, because you're funny and you're nice and that the dynamics of this are tricky. And so your approach is already good because you're it took me a long time, and Adam did help a lot with this, although he's a hypocrite because Adam will help anybody. He's so helpful, but he has he'll get on me about don't spend a chunk of your time each week that you could be working on your own job, your own material, helping these fools who are just so brazen about asking for favors. Like, just tell them no. So I've gotten much better at having boundaries about that kind of stuff and saying no without apology. Like, I just don't have the bandwidth for this right now, or like I'm literally not working, so I have no advice to give. Go listen to a fucking podcast about how to start comedy. We're talking about it right now. People have talked about it on tens of thousands of podcasts. Like,
I know. You know what? Not to toot our own horns here, but I think we're laying down some good groundwork advice here.
I think so too. And then people who are nice tend to sort of overcorrect and then never ask for anything. And Segura actually, two people, Segura and Louis Katz, both, like, at some point when I reached out to them and, we're already friends, we've already worked together, and said, like, hey, if you don't have a feature for this week, would you be interested, or could you ask the club? And at some point, I think in the message I said, like, sorry to bother you. And both Segura and Louis were like, don't apologize. This is how it works. This is how we all got work in the beginning. And this is what the dudes are doing. So, like, you're funny. I want to help you. So you don't have to apologize to me. Like, we're friends. You know what I mean?
I know. I've been in that boat so many times. And dude, I feel like now that you mention it, I feel like at least half of my emails probably start with, hope I didn't get you at a bad time. I'm sorry. I just have a quick question if you get a second. Like, I'm automatically giving myself the out of being an inconvenience to somebody. Years ago, I used to open for Dom Herrera a lot. Like, he would use me a lot on the East Coast. And I'd worked with him a couple times already, but I was still nervous about calling him. But I had to call him for something. So I give him a call and I go, hey, Dom, it's Pat House. Sorry to bother you. And he goes, what the fuck? Would you stop this? I'm like, I'm sorry. Like,
yeah. And I mean, Dom's been around and established forever, but sometimes that dynamic you get even more apologetic if you have a friend like Tom, or like with me, like Nicole Byer, that like got famous during the course of your friendship. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry, Nicole. Just, I hope you're doing, same, like, hope I didn't get you at a bad time. And she's like, we're friends. Stop being weird. And I'm like, okay. Because I just assume they're getting hit up all the time. I don't want to pile on if they're already having so many people ask them for shit. And I've always been very hyper aware of, like, not wanting anyone that's a more famous comedian or someone who works in the industry or runs a club, having them feel like our friendship is based on what I can get out of them. Like, and then I overcompensate.
Yes. So the one good thing, so that snow weekend there's two things I want to tag on this. I hope I remember them both. That Segura weekend with you in Portland, me and Tom spent a lot of time in the hotel because we couldn't really go anywhere. So we had to have like lunch and dinner in the hotel. And the one night we got pretty wine drunk. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, this really sucks, but I'm coming to Philly. Why don't you feature for me when I come to town? I'm like, all right, cool. Awesome. We had a killer week in Philly, and it was Saturday. He looked at me. He's sitting on the couch. I'm standing up, and he goes, yo, you want to do Kansas City and Phoenix? And I was like, holy shit. It was the first time somebody ever asked to take me on the road with them like that. And that all stemmed from that weird ass half canceled week in Portland.
Totally. I think most of my work with Tom has stemmed from that weekend as well, like 100%.
Oh, that's
and,
awesome.
He's so organized about that shit too, that he will just like pull out his phone and look at the calendar and then like plug you into a spreadsheet, and be like, do this date and this date. And he's just so generous. And, I mean, like, he and Nicole really are, I think, the blueprint for how you should ideally treat and pay your openers once you get to that point and you can do it. And the fact that people don't always do it is so crazy to me, because a lot of these guys are like, and women are like, well, I struggled. I mean, I did I would open at a theater for $100. So like you just earn your keep. And it's like, yeah, but if you can afford to make it nice, why would you not do that? Like you're making
Yeah, because you
150
understand
grand
you've been
tonight.
there.
Yeah, you're not going to miss 1 grand out of 150 tonight. You know what I mean? And like a hotel room. But to me, it's life changing.
Oh yeah. Did you sell merch with Tom at all by any chance?
I did on one tour, but then I think the next time around, he just had so much merch that he was like, we gotta get rid of this shit. I mean, their fans are so nuts. They'll buy every single piece of merch. And he's like, I'll just like pay you enough to make up for, what you're losing in merch. And I'm like, that's fine. I don't want to be out there with those freaks anyway. So he's so generous that way.
One time, it started one time. I had my first CD. It was an actual, CD. And this was like 2014 and 15. Like they were on the way out, but people still bought CDs. I was selling them for like $5 or $10, whatever you had on you. And Tom's like, you're selling those for $20 tonight. I'm like, nobody's going to buy a CD for $20. Are you out of your mind? And he goes, fucking sell it for $20. And man, people bought that shit like crazy still.
Oh yeah, Pat, you got to 20 is the minimum because this is more good advice for new comics. But I've always said that too. And I don't know if I heard it from Tom or maybe Jackie Cation, but the thing is,
Jackie Cation told me in Portland. Yep. I'm glad you said that. She said, sell it for 20 or don't sell it.
Because people have a 20, and then you don't have to make change and they want to support you too. So it's like, they're ready to pay it for a shirt or an album or whatever it is. Obviously, if you're selling a fucking sticker, make it $5 or $1. But yeah, 20. I mean, it just makes everything easier. And they've already spent, 2-drink minimum, tickets, snacks. Like they're not. I mean, if they want to support you, they want to give you $20.
No, that's true. I guess it's like apologizing all the time. You just think, it's an inconvenience if I overcharge, just shit in my own head. That's all, which is never going to go away.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know the instinct and I feel weird sometimes about like, cause I sell those pillowcases that maybe you've seen.
I forgot you had those, but I remember you posting about those a while ago. Yeah. Well, nobody else is there just doing it. That's awesome.
I know. I stole it. I stole the idea from my friend who's in a band, a Philly band, actually. They're called Pattern is Movement, and they're not together anymore. But years ago, they made these pillowcases. It's just 2 guys in the band. And one, actually, my friend Chris, who's half the band, was the booker at Johnny Brenda's for years and years.
Great.
So they put an illustration of each guy's face, like on each side of the pillow, so you could like sleep with them, and decide who you wanted on a given night. And I was like, man, I'm stealing that idea. And he was like, yeah, go for it. But like on paper, you can get a pillowcase from a store for $1. And so I'm like, oh, it's not a shirt, so should it really be $20? But the thing is, it basically is a shirt. You know what I mean? It's got a couple holes in it and like you have a tank top. But it's nice fabric. It's screen printed and I know what they cost me. So even though I feel bad about saying, drop $20 on a pillowcase, I had to let go of that basically.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but it's also something so unique. Like, I don't think dropping a 20 on that, like, maybe I'm in my own head too much. I wouldn't bat an eye, but like, of course this is $20. No question. Here.
Yeah. I mean, when people question it, now I'm like, don't buy it,
Oh, dude, isn't it the worst when people like hold your shit right in front of you and analyze it? And you're like, what are you doing? First of all, you're touching all my stuff. Are you buying it or not? You don't have to look at it for 6 minutes. Yes or no?
I know. Well, you know what? I'm hoping silver lining. Those days are over, man. Like people touching everything without buying anything. Also just holding up your time when there are people that want to spend money and you're like, hey man, yeah, it's great to chat with you, but I'm literally not here to make new friends. Like, unless you're going to fuck me or spend $20, like I don't, which the first one hasn't even been an option for me for like 6 years on the road. So, it's just like, keep it moving, bro.
Dude, people that don't get the moment is over are the worst.
Yeah.
Like, You could have like, whether, I'm in line as the headliner, the lines for me as the headliner themselves, or I'm opening for somebody, regardless, there's always a line. And then there's always somebody who's like, my great aunt once told me, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, here we go. And they just have no idea that there's 30 people behind them. They're not going to buy anything. And you could see people behind them, like their eyes are rolling. They're like tapping their feet. Everybody's getting impatient. And this person is just fucking yammering about nothing. It happens all the time.
Yep. And it's a very specific skill to be able to ride that line of like moving them along without them being like, oh, she's a bitch. Although I care less and less about that every day, because it's a very reasonable request and boundary. You know what I mean? And I always get like, whatever the guy or lady is in the show who tried to derail the whole thing and was drunkenly yelling, that's always who wants to like take up my time at the merch table. And over the past 5 years, I've gotten to a place where I can fully be like, I don't want to talk to you. You tried to ruin the show. Please keep it going. Like, don't come to comedy anymore if you're going to behave this way. And yes, some of them are like, you're a huge cunt. And I'm like, that's fine, because the reality is that you're the bad person here. So like, and then occasionally, occasionally they will be like, okay, well, like, let me buy something. And I'm like, perfect. I would love to take your money, but I'm still not obligated to have a conversation with you.
Oh, have you ever, this is very, probably a long shot here. You ever worked with Jimmy Walker from Good Times?
I have not. I saw him at LAX once, and it was like my favorite celebrity sighting ever.
Dude, last 2 years ago, we did a casino in Atlantic City together, the Borgata, and watching him sell merch is my favorite. He's been doing it, legitimately been doing stand-up or comedy in general for about, 50 years. And people come up to him and want him to say dynamite and shit like that. And he flat out tells people, if you ain't buying, I ain't talking.
I love it.
And that was so awesome to see. He just has no time or no patience.
That's so great. And you get so exhausted from it after a while. And what happens too, it's like we were saying about nice comics, is you can always see there's like real fans, like people who are really excited to talk to you, who are kind of nervous, who like hang in the wings. And then these takers are like sucking away your time and energy. And you have to be able to spot those people and be like, hey, come up. Like, do you want to say hi? They're like holding your album that they already have from before and they want you to sign it. Like, but they're sweet. And so they don't push through these assholes. And so I think maybe whatever gene inside of me that was like means I was probably supposed to be a teacher, and that was the way professionally I was headed. I think I have kind of that, a lot of comics, good comics for the most part, you have the ability to like spot different moods in a crowd too. So being able to kind of pinpoint that dynamic, like in a merch line, and be like, okay, you need to go because you don't deserve to be here and I'm done talking to you. And then these very sweet people who are fucking holding my album, like, you come up, it's because nice people get swallowed up, and then I'm out money, they're out an interaction that they wanted, and it sucks. So, but that's a very specific skill, and a lot of people have to travel basically with a bad cop, or have someone from the club be the bad cop and be like, okay, keep the line moving. Like Adam was always really good about that too. And this is why Maria Bamford travels with Jackie.
I always mention on the podcast that when you get comedians talking about comedy, like this you and I could talk this for the next 12 hours.
Yes.
But I want to go back to the stand-up a little bit for a second. Do you remember any of your first jokes from that very first set? Like, were they bad? Like, do you look back now and cringe?
I don't know. I don't know that I cringe. Well, okay, no, I cringe at a couple things. There's one very hacky thing that a lot of white girls do early on, especially if they're like, in a city, is like, I fuck black guys. I'm very ashamed of, because it wasn't even like who I was at the time. I was just like, oh, this is maybe this is something interesting that they can't tell just by looking at me, like what a fucking idiot.
Yeah, but when you also have a joke like that, like, you're going to get a reaction, whether it's laughter, like, you're going to get something, and that's still what we want, So
yes.
we all have had those jokes in our early days where they're not the best, maybe they're hacky or just not original or maybe not even funny, but this will get something out of them, a reaction.
Totally. But I also always had the instinct of wanting to stand out and be unique. And so it really, the host of that laundromat open mic, Tony Sparks, was like, he straight up told me, like, okay, just so you know, like, keep doing it if it's getting laughs and you feel it. But a lot of the new black guys have jokes about fucking chubby white women, and a lot of the chubby white women have jokes about fucking black guys. So if you want to tell jokes that a lot of other people are telling, fine, but I'm letting you know. And then I was like, oh yeah, this isn't even like authentic to who I am. You know what I mean? I'm from the Bay Area. Like, literally my kindergarten boyfriend was black. So this is not like a salacious piece of news. It's just like, I'm doing something hacky. So I'm ashamed a little bit of those, but like, there was a joke that I still like from my first set, but I just can't tell it anymore. But it's something that, like, I have the earliest video of an open mic of me doing it and like crushing in the room. And it's like one of those jokes people like ask me for. And I'm like, I don't tell that anymore, but it's really cute that you remember 2011.
Oh, that's so funny, because there are people like in my life, like people you see every now and then. Like, I could probably think of 2 or 3 people right now that haven't seen me do stand-up since like 2006, and they'll quote shit from then, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I have 3 albums now. That stuff wasn't even on the first one.
I know, and you can't even like remember the setup or any of the tags, but it's like so flattering. Yeah, I'm like, why do you remember this?
It is, but I just want to over-explain that I'm so much better now. I'm personal on stage. I'm more vulnerable. I tell stories, and they're just quoting like a setup punch. I'm like, no, I'm so much better now. Please, I promise. Come out again. It's been 15 years.
Yeah, totally. No, I know that very well.
What was your what were you doing for a day job when you first started doing the open mics?
When I first started, I was heavily underemployed. Again, like really bad recession going on. So I was kind of bouncing around, like waiting tables. And that was a big source of my stress of that terrible year, was like, I just could not get enough work. And a lot of the comics I met were in the same boat, or they had been laid off, and they were like, oh, well, instead of killing myself, maybe I'll try stand up. And then in like a few months in, I started working I was one of the first employees at Ticketfly, which is this ticketing company that is now defunct or was bought out by like Pandora and then Eventbrite and then whatever. I was like doing at first like support and stuff. And so it was a full-time like office day job, and it was pretty demanding. So I would go and really drag ass in there a lot of mornings after like, doing 3 shows and then going out and stuff. But then when I moved up and I like became a manager and then a marketing director, like I just started hiring so many comedians. They pretty much all got fired eventually. But it was a really fun, I hated with a fiery passion the people that owned that company. I still do. They're terrible human beings, and the culture was so toxic, but so many of my good friends worked there, and I made good friends working there that we also had a lot of fun. And I went to a ton of music shows, a ton for free.
Oh, see, that rules.
Oh yeah, like so many shows, and got flown to work festivals, and then that really, I think, helped me so much. I'm really grateful for that. Like once I moved up and I could like work remotely, but also they were sending me out to like meet with other clients nationally and work these festivals or like help a venue get set up on our system, I would always do sets in those towns. And so I'm like making money, expensing everything and doing comedy and like establishing myself. That was huge for me. I feel very privileged by that.
That's such an awesome way to do it too, because I remember like if I was booked to feature the Portland Helium, I would fly in on Tuesday just to do the open mic, just to see friends or see new comics and be somewhere totally different. And like, remember doing Cap City, always trying to do like the Velveeta Room. And so that's awesome that you managed to tie that into your day job, because I always try to add on extra shows, open mics, even just, working on the road for comedy, just to be somewhere totally different.
Totally. And that the balance became a little bit tricky later on once comedy was like a real job for me. But then I also was very established in kind of this like ticketing music venue world, because occasionally, and then I ended up going, when I moved to Portland, I worked for this promoter who owned, several venues and put on like most of the shows in the Portland area. It was tricky because sometimes my name would come up as like a potential opener. And then it was like, some agent is like, yeah, you can't just like have your marketing lady fucking open for this famous comedian. And I'm like, no, I know this is weird, but I am a good comic. I've done it before. Like, it's just a coincidence that I also work in this world. And so that was very hard to navigate for a little bit. Once I left my day job, it wasn't an issue anymore. But then I sort of knew all these people in the industry from working with them through my day job, which was interesting. But yeah, there were definitely times when I would fly to a city, not say anything to the staff or the owner, and then like open for a comic. And then once I had already done a good job at comedy, I would be like, oh, by the way, like I'm your ticket fly rep, like we email every day. And they're like, you're the same Amy Miller. I'm like, I know it's weird, but.
Oh, that's awesome though. That's really cool. What type of place were you a waitress at? Because I have been bartending at my job and waiting tables there for 17 years, but I love it. Like, I love the place. I love who I work with. What kind of place? What kind of place were you at?
Oh, all over the map. Different restaurants.
Oh, so it wasn't just one spot.
Not just one spot, but one spot was the longest, and I would say the place that's like sort of my core waitressing experience, because I was there the longest, and I made people I'm still best friends with to this day that I met there. It's a diner in Emeryville on the Oakland border called Rudy's Can't Fail Cafe, and it is a Clash pun, and it is owned by Mike Dirnt from Green Day. And it's one of those like, we're so cool, we don't even have to have good service kind of diners where like everyone has tattoos and is drunk all the time. I did a good job. Not to say that I never drank on the job, but I wasn't I was a really good server. I love to multitask, and I took it seriously, but it was just managed by a terrible person. So we all look back on it fondly, and I'm still so close to those people. And they're like family to me. And I think we were having fun at the time. But then, it's like anything else. There's also a lot of bullshit involved.
Yeah. Mike Dirnt dabbled in stand-up for a while there.
I did not know that. That's hilarious.
In like I don't think anything truly came of it, but I vividly remember, because I was a huge Green Day fan when I was younger. I remember reading in Rolling Stone that he was dabbling in stand-up in the Bay Area shortly after I had started.
Whoa, I'll have to ask my brother about that. I've never heard that, and that's hilarious. And those guys have been like a peripheral part of my whole life, because my brother's like from the East Bay punk scene, and he actually owns a bar now with Billy Joe in downtown Oakland. So like they've always kind of been around, and I've never heard that fact. But something so funny from the diner was, I remember at one point, like, Mike would occasionally come in for meals, but I'm talking about like once every 8 months, like just to kind of see how things were going. And even though we would have these crazy, like, 12-year-old Japanese girls who literally just flew out to try to find Green Day, and they would sit and like have a Pepsi for like 6 hours, like thinking he was going to come by, and we're like, yo, he really doesn't come in here. But anyway, he had come in, and and then everyone's like, oh, Mike's here, like, be on our best behavior, like give him great service, and you have to go tell the cooks, like, hey, don't phone it in this time on that burger. And everything was fine. But then like the next day, our manager was like, Mike wants to institute like a soccer card system for swearing. So like if you say like fuck on the job and people can hear it, like you'll get a red card. And I was like, wow, Punk is truly dead. He said, Mike said, that's the system they have for the staff at my country club. You're not allowed to swear. And we were like, this isn't a fucking country club, but okay. Just nobody
Green Day
obeyed it.
Dude, Green Day has an album called Awesome as Fuck. How could you?
It was it's incredible what money will do to you, and I haven't seen Mike in years, probably since I was working at Rudy's, but like, Billy's great. He's, literally the only reason that bar hasn't gone under in the pandemic, I think. Lucky for them, but because they've just been closed since March. But yeah, like it was just so like, oh God, don't give punks money. You know what I mean? Like, can't even swear in front of this guy anymore.
That's so crazy to me because I still like Green Day a lot, but when I was like a teenager, even in my 20s, I loved them, and I still have a big soft spot for them. But that's so cool that you know them because they were so important to me, and they're probably the band I've seen the most, like 25, 30 times.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's been, it's a really weird thing. That like Gilman Street era of the late 80s, early 90s that my brother was like, he was always there. He's very instrumental in. He's in the documentary about East Bay Punk, which you should all watch because it's made by some very nice people. The bands that came out of there, it was really like, it's like watching that Comedy Store documentary. It's like, it was just the start of so many incredible bands, and just to be so close to it and that he was such a big part of it is really, really cool. But yeah, they've always kind of...
Rancid?
Mm-hmm.
Like Rancid Operation Ivy?
Oh, dude.
Love all that stuff.
Another funny East Bay job situation is... I also worked at this, all through college, I worked at this video store called Vidiots on College Avenue in Berkeley, and very formative experience. Love it. Still best friends with a lot of those people too. But for a long time, like, I wouldn't say a long time, a few months, Jesse Michaels worked there, and a couple of us are still like in touch with him. But he was so bad at working at a video store. He's such a genius, but there were Berkeley kids in the neighborhood who would like fully come in with like Op Ivy t-shirts on and have no idea that it was Jesse checking out their videos because it was so like out of context. That guy is just the truest form of an artist, and that is a true fucking punk. That he was like, I am done. I don't do this for money. I don't want to sell out. You guys can go make Rancid, do whatever the fuck you want. Like, I want to live a quiet life and do like, for a long time he was like doing construction work and just like drawing and making music, and that is how he wanted to live. And he didn't have regrets about it. Like, it's so cool.
That is really cool because that's such a unique mentality, especially once, you're with not even money getting involved, but, not selling out either. But to choose to live that way, like that's, fame is such a weird thing, and to be able to actually like restrain yourself from that, to be true to yourself, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah. And true to like how you feel like you can meet expectations, and in that world, they've been offered, I'm sure, insane amounts of money to reunite Operation Ivy, and he's always said no. And it was interesting watching the Jawbreaker guys come back together, and this is a brag, but I was at their first show back, thanks to my brother, a secret show they did like just to practice in the East Bay. There were like 50 people there. It was insane. But for them to like finally kind of take the bag and decide like, oh, we're going to do this, and hopefully we can meet everyone's expectations. Cause that's the scary thing, is like, if you do the thing where you sell out, I'm saying this in punk terms, I don't think it was a sellout for them to reunite. And I don't think it would be a sellout for Jesse to do another Op Ivy album. But if he feels that way, fine. Yeah. But if you do it and then the quality is not there, and then your fucking shitty fans are like, oh, you took the bag and you weren't good, fuck this, because there's no forgiveness in that world. It's a lot like comedy. But they made it work. Like, they're still so good. And they like took it really seriously. But it's just, a very unforgiving world of fans.
Oh man, I'm going to have a separate podcast where you and I talk more about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. East Bay punk from the early 90s.
I'm fucking all about it. So I'm gonna let you go here soon, but I do want to. I always love a good horror story. Do you have a specific bomb or just really bad night that you still you think about it and you just get the shivers?
Oh, I'm always so bad at this question, Pat, because I don't know if it's my rosy outlook on life that I feel like every experience is a learning experience.
No, that's true. But I mean, shitty nights are out there. Host, feature, headliner, they're floating around.
Yeah, I think probably my horror stories would be more of like in the vein of working with creeps. Well, the other thing is, I'm going to really regret saying this, but actually it's okay because I don't have any. That's not true. I do have a live outdoor show coming up this weekend. I don't want to curse myself, but I, for the most part, haven't had any epic fucking bombs. I'm proud to say I could be delusional, but I don't think so. Like, I've definitely had lackluster, bad shows, bad crowds. I wasn't feeling it, or I chose the wrong combination of jokes. But for the most part, in the moment, I feel like I could make fun of myself enough that tension is broken at some point. Or I'm just like, these people are terrible,
Isn't that the worst? Because when I first started, somebody told me it's never the crowd's fault, and that could not be more fucking wrong.
Sometimes it really is.
That was one of the first things I heard in comedy, like brand new. That's one of the first things I heard. And now that I've done, I went through the open mics and hosted and featured in the occasional headlining spot. Dude, it is 100% the crowd's fault sometimes.
Sometimes I think people have to scare us into believing that early so that we don't become one of those assholes who leans on that. Like, oh, too much for you guys. It's like, no, you didn't have a punchline. Like, because people use that excuse. I will say, this one gives me the shivers. I did cry on stage once, and it was at the punchline, which I feel like, oh, I'm at home.
You felt comfortable enough to let loose.
I mean, honestly, I don't think I would have done it anywhere else, but I was also just going through some stuff. And what happened was I was opening for Will Durst, who, if you guys don't know, is a very political comedian. He's a Bay Area legend.
He's been another comic who's been doing it 40 plus years.
Yeah, he's great. He has a very specific crowd because he's churning out new, he's like working, it's like a fucking late night gig. Like, he's got an hour of new Trump jokes if you go 6 months without seeing him. And that's a specific taste. That's very NPR, KQED crowd who wants to go and see Will Durst. They, Molly paired me as the feature because Will also he's not a sellout act. So then you're, padding the room with like Gold Star people and Groupon, and so you're offering some balance to that. This is her genius as a booker. A bad booker would go, oh, I'll book a feature who also does political comedy, and it's like,
yep.
No.
And then it's overload.
Yeah. You book the opposite so that there's something for everybody in the room. So I'm opening for him. I'm like crushing, like it's going very well, truly. But there's one fucking guy, and he's a silver-haired, long and lean, rich, cashmere sweater, Rolex, like loafers, just Walnut Creek, like, I'm here for one reason, and that's Will, and I won't even give you the minimal respect of my attention, And I was so focused on this guy, like how that happens sometimes where you're just like, what is your fucking problem? Like his arms are crossed. And then, but I was powering through. I was not letting him win until I said, whatever we fucking say, we're idiots. Oh, I'll get out of here after this. You just hear yourself saying that stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't need to say that out loud. But I did say it out loud.
I did it to you a minute ago. I said, I'm going to let you go soon.
Yeah. It's just like we pick up these habits and then, I don't think I do it anymore, but I was new enough at the time that I said, I'll leave you on this or whatever. And then he goes, finally. And I was like, you motherfucker. And I simultaneously laid into him and roasted him, and people were laughing, but I was crying, so people were also terrified.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotions going on there, and you really don't know how to react.
And the staff was like, is she okay? They're all my friends. And I'm like, listen, yeah, I'm tearing up, and I don't know what it is. Like, yeah, I have fucking daddy issues, and there's something just so offensive that like you couldn't even crack a smile, give me like a basic level of respect. And what's really fucked up, and I'm saying all this, like screaming this at the man from stage, what's really fucked up is that like you're here to see Will Durst. He's great. I get that. But you're also probably some fucking uber liberal, like Berkeley piece of shit where in your mind you really respect women and other people, but you don't fucking care about anybody but yourself. Because like you couldn't even just do the bare fucking minimum to like try to have a good time, right? So I'm screaming at this guy, I'm crying. People are laughing, they're concerned. And then afterwards, I'm at the merch table and the staff's all checking on me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I don't know. I'm probably like about to get my period or something. But he just pissed me off so much because it was just like that. It was like misogyny with like that Bay Area hypocrisy where you're like liberal, but also you don't care. Yeah, you don't care about anybody. And his daughter, who was with him, came up to the merch table and was like, that was fucking awesome. He is a terrible dad. Welcome to my life. He's never been proud of anything that I've done. She's like, I'm a fucking doctor or something. And he's never cared. He never came to like a recital or a game of any kind and said, good job. Like he's an asshole. So thank you for humiliating him. And I was like,
man, that's awesome.
It was the best.
You won. Dude, that's awesome to have that kind of affirmation, to have a second opinion from a daughter.
Perfect resolution. And that stuff never happens that way. You're just always left wondering like, what was that guy's fucking problem? And so to have it resolved, and also to be in a club that was familiar enough that they weren't like, don't have her back. She's fucking crazy. She cries on stage featuring,
No, you were in a win-win because you were correct in doing all of that, and you were at a spot where you could do it, so everything aligned perfectly to make all that happen. And then her coming in is the perfect closer to that story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the staff still roasts me for it to this day. Like it's their favorite thing.
Of course. I mean, you had a rough moment. A lot of people saw it, but that's what friends do. They gotta remind you of shit like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's all right. Is there anything you want to plug here at the very end?
Just follow me on Instagram at Amy Miller Comedy. I have a podcast called Who's Your God? I'd love to have you on, Pat. We talk about religion with comedians. And then I don't know when this comes out, in February. If you have Epics, who knows who has Epics? My mom has it, so you might. I think people with Roku's have it, and then you get it for free on Roku, but everybody else has to pay $5. Anyway, I have a half-hour special coming out on Epics in February, I think like the week of Valentine's Day, so check that out.
Awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want me to coincide the podcast, like to promote it at the same time?
No,
Like-
it's okay. I mean,
Okay.
I will say if you do have epics, that whole series, it's called Unprotected Sets. Funny, right? It's half-hour specials from really, really great comics, most of whom you probably have not heard of yet, doing 20 minutes of stand-up and 10 minutes of sitting on a couch talking to Ryan Sickler about our childhood. So it's a really cool format, directed by the whole team who made This Is Not Happening. So like, it's just an awesome show. So there's a bunch up already. A new chunk comes out in February, including mine. But like, watch any of them, honestly. They're so fucking good.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. Congratulations. And thanks for being
Thank
here. I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pat. This is fun.
Hopefully we get... Thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully we get to cross paths in 2020 and do dare I say, a live indoor show together.
Oh, that would be nice.
That would be nice. So thank you very much for being here, Amy Miller. I always act like there's a crowd here. Like I say the comic's name at the end, like I'm expecting a fucking applause.
Get home
break.
safe. Drive safe, everybody.
Seriously. Next week we have, I don't know.
Thanks, Pat.
All
Tip
right.
your servers.
Cool, no problem. Yeah, I was gonna say that too.